Fiber Artist, and today we are going to be learning the Tunisian Crochet full stitch. And with this stitch, basically with any fiber art, you will be starting with our slip knot, where you take your yarn, flip it over itself until you create an X right here where it's crossing between. Hold that X in place, take your fingers and behind that loop you just created, put your fingers through and pinch the working yarn that is connected to your big ball of yarn, and you pull it through that loop all the way until it tightens. And that is your slip knot. Now today I'm going to be using a 10mm Tunisian crochet hook, which is just longer than any other hook, and it's larger than necessary just because it makes the stitches so much easier to see when I'm working and for demonstration purposes. So we put that into our loop that we made and pull that tight, and that is how we will be starting. Now this stitch, the full stitch, it does not need a specific number of stitches or a specific number of multiples, so you can make any amount of stitches that you want, however long you want it, however short you want it. We're going to go with our usual 10, just because that is our tried and true method. And so because I'm going with 10, I'm just going to make 10 chains. And to make a chain, you will basically take your working yarn, grab it with the crook of your hook here, and then you pull it through the loop of that slip knot that you made, that loop, and that is your first chain. And to do the second chain, you will again grab that working yarn with the crook of your hook and pull it through that loop that was just made, and that is your second chain. So that's 2 chains, and we're going to continue until we have 10 chains. So we have 10 chains. Now what we are going to do is we're going to flip this over onto its back side. And what we're going to do is we are going to work in our back bumps here. You can see these little bumps right here. And in order to work into, or to start working into them, we will skip our first bump. So the one that's immediately connected to the loop that is on the hook, we're going to skip that one. And we're going to go into that next bump that's right next to it. Now I like to work with the point of the hook to slide into these little bumps, because if you try to push it in from here, it makes it just a little bit difficult. If that is how you prefer to do it and it's easier for you, by all means. But if you find that difficult, the tip of the hook works just as good, if not better in most cases. So with that tip of the hook, we're going to insert it into that back bump loop and then push the hook all the way through. Take your working yarn and yarn over, so pull your yarn over your hook so that you can grab the working yarn with the crook of your hook and then pull it through that little back bump. And that counts as 1 stitch. So I'm going to show that again with the tip of our hook into the little back bump here. I'm going to slide the hook through, yarn over, with the crook of the hook, pull it through that back bump. And we're going to continue that all the way down to the first little bump. Okay, so we got all of our back bumps worked. Now at this point is where we want to count the loops that are on our hook so that we can make sure that we still have as many loops as many stitches as we want. Now I had wanted 10, so there should be 10 loops on our hook. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 loops, 10 stitches. That is perfect for what I am going for. Now, if you were doing another number, then you will definitely have to count out that many loops, however many loops that you wanted. Now, what we are going to do to continue is we are going to take our working yarn. It's connected to our big ball of yarn, and we will take that with our crook of the hook, pull it through one of those loops, and then we are going to grab that yarn again with the crook of our hook and pull through 2 loops. And we are going to continue to pull through 2 loops all the way until we have only 1 loop left on our hook. So this is our foundation chains and our foundation stitches. This is how most Tunisian crochet will start. I'm not going to say all, because there could be a new method where it doesn't start off like this, but as far as I know, this is how most Tunisian crochet starts. Now what we are going to do is, for this, our first loop on our hook counts as our first stitch, and so this first loop here, we will skip it because that is also the first stitch. So we skip that loop, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to work in the spaces between the loops. So we skip the stitch, and this first loop, we're not working inside of the loop, we're not working around the loop. This is the space we are going to work in right here. This little space right here. What you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into that space, yarn over, and with the crook of your hook, pull it upward. I'm going to show that again. You go on to basically this loop, but you don't work into this loop. We're skipping over that loop into this space in between both loops right here. So you will insert into that space, yarn over, with the crook of your hook, pull up. And you're going to continue doing that until we get to the end. There's a bit of a specialty there. So you will see that I have stopped before getting to the last space. This last space here, because you see this loop, and then this is our end space, which you can see the loop here and the extra little yarn that's there. That is our last stitch right here, right here. That's our true last end stitch. We are going to skip the space between this last loop and our end stitch. We're skipping that space, and we're going to go directly into our end. Just like that. Yarn over and pull with the crook of your hook through that end loop. So this is how it's going to look. Now, if you are curious as to why we skipped that space, this is still 10 stitches. We originally started with 10, and we can count that out. So that's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That is still 10 stitches. So we're not losing any stitches. We're not decreasing or anything like that. It's just this pattern does require to skip that space, and you will see why later on. Now, once we are finished with all of those, we're going to take our yarn, our working yarn, with the crook of our hook. We're going to pull through one loop, to create our new end stitch. And then we are going to grab that working yarn again with the crook of our hook, pull through 2 loops at a time, and continue to pull through 2 loops at a time until we have only 1 loop left on our hook. Okay, so this is how it looks so far. Now what we are going to do is we are going to again skip our first stitch because this counts as our first stitch. Now earlier what we did was we skipped our first stitch and then we worked into the loop or the space between the first loop. This time around we're going to skip the first space and go into the second space. So this is our first stitch right here, the loop right at the end. Then our next loop right here, that space in between, we're skipping it. We're going on to the next space between the second loop and the third loop. And we are going to insert into that space there, yarn over and pull through with the crook of your hook. And we're going to continue to go into each space in between each loop all the way down. Okay, now this is where we stopped in our previous row. Now because we skipped our first space here, we're going to actually work into our last space. So you can see right here it's a lot larger because in the row before we skipped it, so this is much larger. You'll be able to see it so much larger than the other spaces. This is our last loop and this is our end stitch here. You can tell by, you see this loop coming up here and then that extra yarn bar that's coming out from the side right at the end. We're going to work into that afterward, but we have to work that space right there first, and then you can insert into that end stitch that I had showed you, like so. This is an alternating pattern where each first space and end space gets skipped alternatively. So in our first row, we didn't skip that first space, we skipped the last space. Now in this row, we skipped the first space, but we didn't skip the last space. The next row over, we will not skip the first space, but we will skip this one. And it's going to keep going. It's going to alternate between skipping the first space and skipping the last space. Let's show that. So we will yarn over and grab our working yarn with the crook of our hook, pull through 1 loop, grab the yarn with the crook of your hook and pull through 2 loops at a time. And we're going to continue to do that all the way until we have only 1 loop left on our hook. Okay, so like I said before, we are alternating the spaces that we skip. So a good way to tell whether you need to skip or work into the space is if you pull on the yarn, and it's okay to pull on the yarn. If you see in the previous stitch that end one right here and the loop, then you need to work into this space. because you can see how this loop right here, how it's shown. That is how you can tell. If you lose your place, if you have to put it down for any moment, and it's the, all right, which one do I have to skip? I don't know. So that's a good way to tell for if you need to work the space or skip the space. Is the one right underneath it, right here. And then you can continue to work into the spaces. Now, again, because we have worked our first space, we're skipping our last space. And a good way to tell at the end, again, if you had to put your work down before you finished the row and you just forgot and you just don't want to go all the way to the first one to tell if you worked the first space or not, I don't know. There could be multiple reasons as to why you don't want to just check the first one of the row, because that is a way to check, is look at your first stitch, and if you skipped it, then you work this stitch. If you didn't skip it, then you skip the end stitch. This one, if you look at it closely, you can see how close these two are together. Like, there is no gapping. I'm pretty sure at this one, you saw how big of a gap that it left. This does not have such big a gap. And because of that, we are going to now work into our end stitch and skip that space. You see that loop right here, that end loop right there, and that extra little yarn bar that's going onto the outermost side. That is where we're going to work into right there. Push right through, yarn over, and pull through. And again, we will just count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is very much repeating everything just over and over and over again. Again, alternating between skipping the first stitch and skipping the last stitch. That is it. So I will work up more rows just so that you can see a bigger piece of how this would look. Da, 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 da. So this is the Tunisian crochet full stitch. There is a little bit of, holes and gapping, and that's just because I used a larger hook than I needed to. I will say this fabric, while it does create a really good drape, like it's really nice and drapey, it is prone to curling. You could see that curl right there. So you can definitely block this. Something that I will say is I have made a full scarf out of this stitch. And something that I did was that once I finished the scarf, I took another color, a contrasting color, and did a single crochet border around the full edge. And it came out lovely. It does not curl as much because the single crochets are straightening it out. But if you don't want to do a single crochet border, you can block your work. It is something that I am not very qualified to teach, so you can definitely find videos of how to block your work on YouTube if you don't know. But if you do, then heavy blocking is definitely going to be helpful when it comes to making sure that this does not curl. Other than that, it is a gorgeous stitch. I find that it looks a little more sophisticated, especially if you use like a nice gray. It's very sophisticated, and it's a very, very nice stitch. I personally enjoy it. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful in your endeavors and in your future projects. All right, happy crafting.